And welcome back to Open. The COVID-19 pandemic has led to high rates of unemployment in locations across the nation, including right here in the borough of the Bronx. At the start of April 30th of last year, more than 30 million Americans filed for unemployment. The Thinkubator shared a recent report focusing on powering the voice of Bronx youth through workforce development training and providing access to educational and career pathways. The report provides insight on innovative solutions to deal with high rates of unemployment in locations here in boroughs like the Bronx. Joining us to share more and provide further insight is the director of the think tank at the Thinkubator, Dr. Lessie Branch, and then also president and CEO of the Thinkubator, Dr. Edward Summers. And welcome both back to Open.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Daren.
Thanks. And so as we look at these numbers, obviously the numbers continue to be startling in the area of unemployment. Let's go into your report and what are you trying to move from that report, given the fact that it is telling when it comes to unemployment?
What we are trying to do is get electeds and others to focus on organizations such as the Thinkubator and empower them, give them the resources so they can work with youth and displaced and disaffected employees so they can get back to the workforce. In many instances, folks in communities like the Bronx are underemployed or unemployed. And so it really just has a ripple effect in how they are able to manage the day to day. And so it's resources number one, but policy number two to help these unemployed and underemployed individuals try to get back to some semblance of normalcy around employment.
Dr. Summers, we talked about previously some of the strategies that were being implemented. Talk to us a little bit about the workforce development strategies.
Sure. So this report calls for us to think big and go big. It goes back to FDR and the New Deal in terms of thinking about like infrastructure projects. There is so much to be done throughout the Bronx, throughout New York City. And we need to use this time to think creatively and innovative about how we get people back to work. So one of the things that the report suggests is broadband for all. We know that during this time of COVID, where everyone's working from home, young people have to actually school at home as well, broadband has been a major challenge, and it's unveiled the digital equity challenge in boroughs like the Bronx and communities like Mott Haven and the Bronx versus other communities. So thinking about how do we put an infrastructure down to make sure that everyone has access to broadband. That's a major project. That is a major undertaking that can train and tool so many people, both young and older, who can actually go get back to work. So that's one idea. Another idea is to really think about the times that we're in. Thinking about the fact that many of the Bronx employees were in the Bronx was called the essential borough, right? So that means that many people had to go to work still, while lots of people in the knowledge economy was able to stay home and work from home largely. So this is a great opportunity, a great time to really think about how are we actually retooling individuals? How do we provide them with the training necessary to have jobs that, of course, you need the city to run, so you need people in essential services, but not every employee in the Bronx should be an essential employee, right? We should have a diversity of careers and occupations that people are located in. So how do we think about training? How do our government thinks about funding organizations like the Thinkubator and the Knowledge House and Wall Street Bound? These are really important organizations that are training our youth to think about different types of careers in tech, careers in finance, careers in project management. So it's really about how do we think about and take this time to invest in local workforce development organizations to truly retool our young people and our not so young people for an economy that we know that's largely digital, that's largely dependent on technology, and that's largely dependent on the knowledge sector. Of course, this is not to say that we don't need to train people to be mechanics and engineer. Like, I think that's all critical, but making sure that communities like the Bronx have a diversity of careers and occupations that people are in versus being labeled the essential borough, which was really important during the height of COVID, of course. They had to keep the city running. But it underpinned the types of jobs and the types of occupations that Bronx residents are in versus other people in. And typically, not always, but typically a lot of the jobs and occupations that are located in the Bronx are associated with low wage earners. And so we want to change that dynamic, right? We want people who can keep the city running, as I said, but then also be represented in the knowledge economy. And that's what organizations like the Thinkubator is doing. We have our career connected programs that are focused on making sure that we expose, train, and connect young people to career opportunities, opportunities that allows for room for growth and development, whether it's professional development or education development. And that's what we need to be doing. So our government needs to be focused on thinking about this recovery, thinking about major, large infrastructure projects like broadband, but then also investing in organizations who are doing good work to retool our young people and our not so young people for this economy that exists.
I like the way you say not so young people. Dr. Leslie, let me bring you back in and talk a little bit more about not-for-profits, because not-for-profit sector is huge here in the borough of the Bronx and across New York City. I know that one of the recommendations that was spoken of was really increasing some of the resource capacity for these not-for-profits. Can you share a little bit more about what that looks like?
So it looks, to be honest, it looks like just putting dollars, putting resources into these nonprofits, and just to double back to something that Dr. Summers said. In 1971, an economist by the name of Barbara Bergman developed a model called Occupational crowding model, and it posited that Black men and what we are seeing today, it's not just Black men, but Black men in her model are crowded into low wage occupations and crowded out of high wage occupations due to elements of discrimination. And so what it means is putting money where your mouth is, right? Organizations and nonprofits such as the Thinkubator, uh, we're doing good work, but we have little to no resources. And we are going to do the work regardless of whether we have the resources. But if the talk is about equity and equality and opportunity, then that means the resources have to follow. And there is this book called The Great Risk Shift, I believe it is. And, there has been a shift in responsibility away from the collective to the individual or the persons who are least able to shoulder the burdens. And so, it's time for government, for funders, for others to really step up and, walk the walk, and represent that they are committed to the narratives that they are putting forth.
Yeah, yeah. So where do we see things going from here, Dr. Summers?
Sure. So we are very much focused on making sure that we talk with and align with other groups who feel the way that we feel in terms of bold, innovative policies to get people back to work. And our approach is to really talk as much as possible to funders, to the government, and to anyone who will, quite frankly, listen about our thoughts and our ideas of how to get folks back to work. In particular, we're a youth-driven organization, so our focus is on how do we get young people connected to opportunities that will put them on a pathway to earning a living wage and above. We want young people to really earn a living wage and above. And so that's our approach, is really just talking as much as possible, talking to folks like yourself and others who will listen and who will spread the word about the importance of thinking big and bold about what we need to do to get this economy jump back started. We know that the Bronx has disproportionately been hit by COVID-19 on the community. At the height of COVID, we were about at 25% unemployment. So we really need to make sure that we're thinking big, boldly, inclusive, and just and equitable to get folks back to work. And this is an election year for the BP, the borough president, and there's some other important elections this year as well, that we need to be talking to folks and making sure that they're thinking about the interests of our community, our young people, and our not so young people.
Yeah. Dr. Branch, before we get out of here, let me ask the question about the young people that Dr. Summers is referring to and navigating the COVID-19 pandemic. Now that we were in it for almost a year, how would you assess the young people that you've dealt with and their resilience during this pandemic?
So, the young people are absolutely resilient. They are responsible. The young people in the Bronx want to get their schooling. They want to work. In a lot of cases, they more than want to work, they have to because the primary source of income in their family has either gotten sick from COVID, has died from it, or has become unemployed. And so the young people in our community are mature above their years. The level of responsibility that they take on is just commendable. And so I would love to see the narrative change around young people from the Bronx, that they are responsible, they are hardworking, they are caring and thoughtful, and they are civic and community minded.
Dr. Leslie Branch, we'll leave it there. And Dr. Summers, thank you so much for being with us here on Open. And once again, glad to have you.
Thanks
Thank
again,
you.
Daren.
All righty. Well, I want to let you know if you want more information, please go visit their website at thinkubator.org and follow them on social media at The Thinkubator. Well, we encourage you don't go anywhere. We do have more Open coming up. We'll be right back right after this.